introduction.
Welcome to the first introductory episode of a new series that I'm going to start presenting called Frankly Frank. I'm Frank D. Paul. My education is in administration supervision doctorate, and I also am a student and knowledgeable of theology from a Catholic perspective. 2,000 years since Christ, we have watched a world develop from ancient paganism to total Christianity. The first millennium, up to the year 1000, was building that see,
It's okay. Keep it going.
but building that Christianity base that laid the foundation for the first coming of Christ. And what I will talk about in these episodes will be based not only on my knowledge of theology, but my knowledge also of social studies and history and background. I lived through the Depression, World War II, Korean War, the founding of the United Nations, the Korean War, and also into the Vietnam, and now I'm in my mid-80s. And I want to leave something behind with my American wonderful citizens to make things very clear in a society that is totally disrupting itself from its original philosophical basis. God is the center of the American experience. 13 colonies were established for one reason: to give independence of religion to certain religions. And there were 13 colonies for this purpose. But the whole idea behind it was to center ourselves around God's commandments and give people the freedom to express their religious desires and their religious sentiments freely. So I'm going to try to explain in these series a development starting with Americanism, because America is a country that is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. They were not founded on anything but Judeo-Christian principles. And we are losing that in our society today, and as a result we have become a secular, materialistic country that is based on replacing God with man, and man is trying to make themselves God in today's world. And now we are committing the sin of Adam and Eve all over again. So we got to correct that. So what we're going to talk about during this series is give you my experiences and knowledge from my perspective. And I've been studying this since I was a child in my early first 10 years of my life. I'm in the 5th generation of my life now. My first generation of life was in the Depression. And we will talk about the foundation of our country as a Christian Judeo country as I grew up in, and has developed all the way up in my lifetime up through the 1960s. And it's in the 1960s when things started really going down the drain. I want to also share with you that we never did we expect that we would win a war on 2 different oceans, 2 different fronts in 4.5 years. We can't win a Vietnam War in 2.5 years, 3.5 years. We're 10 years into it. We can't win anything, but we won 2 wars, and that's because we were a Christian, Judeo-based nation, and we not only had a citizenry that prayed us, and I mean prayer, into the winning of that war. Today is December the 5th, 2 days from now, we're going to be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the sneak attack, the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. And in that year, I remember clearly, I was at that time 11 years old. And I remember clearly, it was a Sunday afternoon, that our neighbor upstairs came down and said, "Turn on the radio. The Japs are bombing Pearl Harbor." Pearl Harbor was an unknown to us because it was not a state at that time. It was a possession of the United States. But we had our entire naval fleet in the Pacific centered in Pearl Harbor. And the Japanese came on a Sunday morning after beautiful sunny morning, and they bombed us mercilessly. We will never forget that day in history. And you need to know about it because you, being the millenniums that you are, have not learned this in your social studies classes. You need to hear the foundation of our country. You need to hear what our Constitution was based upon. And you also need to know that the Declaration of Independence preceded our Constitution, and it is the philosophical basis for our fighting for independence from the rule of the royalty in England. And those years of the Declaration of Independence laid the basis for our Constitution. It took us almost 10 years to get a Constitution written that was in congruence with our Judeo-Christian principles and our desire for freedom from the royal domain of England at that time. That gives you an overview of where I'm coming from, and I would like to share with you that I have to develop this at future sessions. And I'm going to try to do it from a philosophical basis, and I cannot deny anything except I have 3 principles in everything that I've done in my profession and in my life, in which our newly elected vice president said, I totally agree with. My number 1 principle is going to be God. My number 2 principle is going to be my family. And my 3rd principle is going to be based upon the Constitution of our United States of America and our country. And that's the order in which I value everything that's going to be presented to you. So thank you for allowing this introductory opening to you. I hope that you'll be interested enough to tune in on YouTube in future as I develop the future goals. And I will develop them carefully as soon as I am able to put them together sequentially so that you can understand them. And I hope that you also will know that we are in a crisis in our world now. And if I weren't in a crisis, if I didn't have this crisis developing where the world, but not only the world, but our country, and the United States and our country and the world are in the same kind of a crisis. The difference is our country has a philosophical basis that is rooted on the democratic principles, but we are a republic and we are democratically oriented. But we have a defined border. Our country is clearly established to be an independent country with borders. We will never join the one world mentality that is being prevalently presented as a killer to the freedoms in our world today. Thank you.